Welcome to the 5th episode of the Justin Strawn Podcast. I am your host, Justin Strawn. Glad to be back with you for another week of recording. This will probably be the only show that I get in this week. It is Thanksgiving week, so obviously an event-filled week for most of us out in the world as we go about trying to spend time with family, get other things done. So like I said, probably just one show this week. I like to do two, but we'll probably just get the one show in this week. Real quick, before we get into the heart of the show, let me remind you, if you would, if you're listening to the show, if you haven't subscribed to the show on your favorite podcast player, or if you're watching it on YouTube and you haven't subscribed there, I would really appreciate it if you did. If you have an option to rate and review the show on your podcast player or wherever it is that you are watching the show from or listening to the show from, I would really appreciate it if you did that, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, since that's where most people listen to podcasts. It would help me out a whole lot if you were able to just go on there, click the 5-star rating, and then drop in a quick little review. It doesn't have to be much. You can just write, great show, love it, something like that. It helps a lot in terms of getting the show in front of new people. So if you could do that, it would really help me a lot. Also, I am on all of the social media platforms. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I've got YouTube, so you can check me out there. Most of my handles are Justin M. Strawn. If you can't find me there, I think Instagram is Justin Strawn. So like I said, there's different ways you can find me. I'm putting clips on all the platforms, obviously loading the entire show up to the podcast platforms and to YouTube as well. And if you're on Spotify, you can actually go on and leave a comment directly on the episode. If you ever want to reach out and say something specifically about the episode, you can do that on Spotify if you're listening to it on Spotify. And you can actually watch the show on Spotify as well because it is a video podcast as well. So those are all ways in which you can follow and keep up with the show. And I would appreciate it if you did. It would help me out a whole lot. So thank you very much for those of you who have. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. Let's start talking about what we've got lined up on the show this week. We've got Egg Bowl Talk. If you're a Mississippi State fan and you're here for that, we got Egg Bowl Talk. Egg Bowl Talk at the beginning of the show. We'll be discussing quite a bit about what all took place over the weekend. We'll get into the woes of the Mississippi State basketball program because things are not looking good, guys. They're really not. It's rough right now for the basketball team. And in the world of entertainment, news and entertainment, we will take a look at a couple of shows that I've been watching. We'll look at Pluribus again. I'm really digging this show. I enjoy it a lot, so we'll take a look at it. And a really good episode that we got from them this past week on Apple TV. We'll take a look at the show The Beast and Me in a little bit later on as well. It was on Netflix. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Stranger Things as the 5th season gets ready to drop on Wednesday night. So if you are here for specific parts of the show and you don't want to listen to the rest of it, check the show notes. I'm going to have everything lined up for you in the show notes so you can see where you want to listen to and just pick up from there. And let's go ahead and get in. All right, Egg Bowl. Huge week for Mississippi State because it is Egg Bowl week. Mississippi State is 5-6. They are trying their best to get bowl eligibility locked up. They've had plenty of opportunities to do it. Could have done it against Texas. Could have done it against Tennessee. Could have done it against Florida. Didn't do it. And so now they've got to find a way to get a win over the Ole Miss Rebels, their arch rival, here on Black Friday when we get to the end of the week this week. So look, theoretically, little should have changed between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Both teams, this is the first time I think this has ever happened, and I could be wrong about that, but I think this is the first time ever that both teams had bye weeks before that. So theoretically, nothing should have changed. And for Mississippi State, really little has. I don't think we all saw them just get run over by Missouri. Their defense just absolutely crushed the Mississippi State offensive line and gave Blake Shapen and company just tons of fits against the Missouri Tiger defense, and it was not pretty. They ended up losing 49-27, and it was just a really, really ugly loss. And like I said, so very little has changed for Mississippi State. And theoretically, little should have changed for Ole Miss. And look, technically, I guess nothing has, but the lane drama really ramped up. We talked about it last week on the show that I recorded on Wednesday about how much smoke there was. Well, there's even more smoke now that Lane Kiffin might be taking off for for another job, either LSU or Florida. And it's looking more and more like it's going to end up being LSU. Now, look, things could change. There's a lot that has to take place between now and Saturday, when Keith Carter said that he's going to make an announcement and when a decision will finally be made. But it has been a wild weekend. There was lots of things flying around in the media. There were lots of reports about Lane Kiffin's family going to Baton Rouge and taking trips to Gainesville and looking around the towns and just what they might be possibly interested in moving to. So you had all that going on. He works for Yahoo, basically saying that LSU was offering over $90 million. They had a huge package in terms of NIL, and it was going to be, this is what they were offering. And they were also offering quite a bit in terms of assistant coaches' salaries. And this is the offer that basically Ole Miss is going to be up against if they want to keep Lane Kiffin. You have another report on Saturday from Brandon Marcello at On3 Sports, and his report has more specific details. 7 years, $98 million. That's $14 million a year. That is what they are offering Kiffin. And that's just, to me, this is just insane. This is just really insane. The fact that Lane Kiffin is being offered $14 million a year, which would make him the highest paid coach in the country. And he hasn't even gotten Ole Miss to an SEC championship game yet. That's just shocking to me that they are willing to spend as much. Look, the guy's a really good coach. He's learned a lot in his years, and he has matured some. He's still got quite a bit to do in terms of maturing, but he has matured some in terms of what he does as a coach. But to give a guy $14 million a year and just make these massive commitments to him, and this is what Ole Miss said they will match too, by the way. So Ole Miss is saying they're willing to do this as well. So whether or not they can or not, I do wonder just how sustainable that is for them as a program to dish out that much money. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But it's just really insane to me that they are willing to spend that much for a guy who has not even made the SEC championship game yet. And now technically they could this year. If things break the correct way, they could end up in the SEC championship. I think Texas A&M would have to lose. I think Ole Miss would have to win. And I think Alabama would have to lose as well. I don't know. Like I said, the tiebreakers are weird because there's a very, very good possibility that there could be 4 7-1 teams in the SEC trying to make it to the SEC championship game. It doesn't work that way necessarily if Texas A&M. If Texas A&M wins, it makes it a lot more difficult for Ole Miss because of the fact that they've got a loss against Georgia. But like I said, I don't know all the tiebreakers. I've tried to read them and figure it out, and I could not figure it out. So, but regardless, they could make it this year. I don't know if they will. I think they have a little bit of a hill to climb in terms of getting into the SEC championship game, but who knows? But here's the deal. Like I said, paying that guy that much money, making that big of a commitment to him, and he's never made the SEC championship game. That just is surprising to me, and it's shocking to me. And that's kind of one of the issues that Ole Miss has with this, because like I said, I don't know how sustainable this is for Ole Miss. Look, LSU, Florida will have bigger budgets. They will always have bigger budgets. They just will. I talked about this last week. They're going to have bigger budgets simply because they have more opportunities for revenue. LSU Stadium is about 30 to 35,000, has about 30 to 35,000 more seats than Ole Miss. And if we're just talking about just game day revenue, just by game day revenue, not all the other stuff that brings in money for them as well. If you're going just by game day revenue, let's just say it's 35,000 more seats that LSU Tiger Stadium has over Vaught Hemingway. Let's say the average ticket price in both stadiums is $100. Let's just say that. So you multiply $100 times 35,000. The number you get is $3.5 million. So on average, just in ticket prices alone, LSU can bring in $3.5 million more dollars per game than Ole Miss. Then you have to factor in concessions. You have to factor in additional parking. You have to factor in additional revenue that they make off of ads. And you start to add all this stuff up. My guess is LSU is bringing in $10 to $15 million more per home game than Ole Miss is every single time that they take the field. So they're, like I said, and that's significant. I mean, that's like $70 million. I mean, that's just a huge number. And Ole Miss is going to have to make, if they're going to match it, and they said they will match that. If they're going to do that, they're going to have to rely more heavily on donor contributions than they will actual athletic funds. That's just part of it. And that's why this is where I start to wonder just how sustainable that is for Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is never going to be able to sustain a 100,000 plus stadium unless they just go on a serious run where they end up winning like 5 or 6 championships in the next 10 years. That's just not going to happen. And look, Ole Miss could end up winning a championship at some point. They could. But I think the reason why Lane Kiffin is seriously considering this and why I think there's a really good chance that he is going to leave is because when you look at what they can do and what LSU and Florida, and who knows, Alabama could even get in on this. If Kevin Moore loses to Auburn this weekend, I don't think they will, but look, let's just go ahead and say it's a possibility. If they do, even if they win, he might still do this. He could end up going to Penn State. And if he goes to Penn State, that opens up Alabama's job. And then you've got another marquee opening that will definitely be in the hunt to try to get Lane Kiffin. They didn't want him a few years ago, but I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. He's definitely the hottest commodity out there. But one of the reasons why I think Ole Miss has been able to level the playing field is because Ole Miss, when NIL became available, they went all in. They said, we are going to commit to this. Their fans, their donors, their boosters, they decided they were going to go all in, and they were going to do everything they could to be competitive because they could pay the players. All the under the table stuff was gone. They can now be completely out in the open, and they were going to pay their players. And that's just the way that it was going to be. And they were going to level the playing field by committing to NIL. You had places like Florida and LSU and Alabama. The reason why Ole Miss has been able to catch up with some of these programs is because they were stubborn. A lot of them, if you look at what they've done in terms of NIL, yes, they have contributed to NIL and they have participated in it, but they have not participated at the same type of level that an Ole Miss has. They have because they are the blue bloods, because they are the schools that have always been successful and have always been at the top of the college football game. Those schools have always just felt like we can still get the best players because of the name that is on the front of our jersey, because we are Florida, because we are LSU, because we are Alabama. And they didn't commit to NIL. They were kind of stubborn about doing this. They didn't want to do it because it's not the way that they've done things. And as much as people like to talk about how good tradition is, tradition can sometimes get in the way, and it has gotten in the way of those programs. And now they have seen what programs like Ole Miss, programs like Indiana, programs like Texas Tech, teams that have not traditionally had that much success, at least not to the levels they are currently anyway, who have not been as successful as they are currently, they're having incredible success. Indiana is the number 2 team in the country. They're probably going to go into the college football playoff either with 1 loss or no losses as the Big Ten champion, depending on what they do against Ohio State. Texas Tech is the number 5 team in the country. They've never been this good, except for the one time when they had the receiver. I can't remember what's his name. Ended up playing for the 49ers, I think. I can't remember. But this is just unseen territory for Texas Tech, and they committed to NIL. They've got the money, and they're spending it, and they have leveled the playing field. And this is why Texas Tech is so good right now. So, like I said, this is why Ole Miss has been able to catch up. And you're going to see these other programs that have always been the best in college football. They're starting to realize this, and they're making the commitment. And as they make the same commitment to NIL that these types of schools have made, it's going to be harder for Lane Kiffin to win at Ole Miss. It just is. It really is. And I've heard people say, well, he should stay at Ole Miss because if he wins 9 games a year, they'll make a statue of him. Look, I'll just tell you this much right now. If they pay him $14 million a year as the highest paid coach in college football, there is no way that Ole Miss will accept 9 wins every year and not making the playoff, but just once or twice every 10 years. That the expectations will ramp up. He will have to make the college football playoff almost every single year, making that kind of money. And making the commitment that Ole Miss has made financially to NIL and to everything else that he has asked for, the expectations will be raised. They will not accept 8-9 wins every single year. They won't. They're going to expect college football playoffs almost every single year that they go into a new season. That's just reality. I mean, most if you make that big of a financial commitment, you expect returns on that financial commitment. And so they'll want to see it. And I've also heard people say, well, if you go to LSU, if you go to Florida, you're going to get fired if you only win 9 games a year. Look, and it's going to be, 3, you'll be out of a job 3 days later. That's not necessarily going to be the case. And this is one of the reasons why I think Lane Kiffin is really considering a move this year, is because he's got options this year. And these types of jobs don't always come open. Look, if you get the right coach in these jobs don't come open. If you have a good coach in, I mean, look at Nick Saban. He was there from 2007 until 2023. Why? Because he was a good coach and he won, and therefore the job didn't open up. James Franklin was at Penn State for like 10 years, and they finally just didn't win enough to the point where and he's really a good case for this. Eventually, winning 10 games a year wasn't enough for Penn State because he couldn't win the big game. So therefore they got rid of him. So like I said, eventually people will get tired of that. But if you get the right coach at LSU, you get the right coach at Florida, you get the right coach at Alabama, those coaches are going to win a lot, and those jobs won't come open. So he has the option to make a move now to get one of these big jobs where he thinks he can win championships every 2 or 3 years, every 3 or 4 years. And that's that's the level that Lane Kiffin wants to win at. He is in his 50s. I'm not sure how far into his 50s he is, but he's in his 50s. And he probably wants to win a few national championships before he retires. And I think what it will boil down to for Lane Kiffin this week, I think what it boils down to is, if Ole Miss wins this weekend, does he think this team can win a national championship? And my personal opinion is no, and I'll get into more of this one. But if he thinks they can, he probably stays and tries to win because he knows he can get one in the bag. But if he doesn't think this team can win a national championship, I think you have to leave and go where the potential for multiple national championships is higher. And I think that's what he's looking at this point. Look, should Ole Miss win this weekend? Yes, they probably should. They should probably beat Mississippi State. They're an 8.5-point favorite. But the more I looked at it between these two teams, I don't know if they're as insanely different as we think they are, because you look at the schedules of these two teams and they are not the same. They are not the same at all. Mississippi State on Friday will play technically 7, but my guess is it will be 6 after the next college football playoff poll releases. We'll have 7 teams from the college football playoff poll that they have played when they play Ole Miss. Now, Missouri is probably going to fall out after the new one gets announced, and that will take them down to 6. But Mississippi State's played Arizona State, they played Tennessee, Texas A&M. Who am I next? Who's next? Texas A&M, Texas, and Georgia. There's 5 right there. Like I said, they also play Missouri, but they're probably going to fall out. They're going to play Ole Miss, which will make 6. They're 1-5. They're 1-4 against current, or 1-5 technically against current college football playoff teams. But my guess is, like I said, once Missouri falls out, they'll move to 1-4. But let's be honest, Missouri would probably still be in the college football playoff and higher up if they hadn't lost Pribula. Mississippi State's schedule has been absolutely insane. It has just been absolutely insanely difficult. I don't know how the SEC decided to just punish Mississippi State like they did with this schedule that they've had these 2 years, but they have. It's just been insane. Ole Miss has currently played technically three teams in the college football playoff. They have Tulane, and look, this has not been a great year for the Group of 5, and this is where I think NIL is going to hurt the most, is Group of 5 teams, because Group of 5 teams are just going to have their players picked left and right with NIL and the transfer portal. They're going to lose them. I mean, Mississippi State has Fluff Bothwell, who was a really great running back for South Alabama. State went and got him because they could. And, you have a player that ends up having a great year on a Group of 5 team, or Group of 6, I guess is technically what it is now. And you have those players who have really great years. They're going to get plucked by Power 4 schools. They just are. And this is one of the reasons why you have an 8-2 Tulane team that's currently in the top 25. I don't think Tulane would, in most circumstances, I don't think Tulane would be ranked, but one team from those conferences has to make it into has to make it into the college football playoff, and I think it's the only reason why Tulane is currently ranked. I don't think they would normally be ranked, but they do have a win over Tulane, they have a win over Oklahoma, and they have a loss to Georgia. If you put Ole Miss against Mississippi State schedules, I truly believe that Ole Miss would probably be 8-3 heading into the Egg Bowl. I truly believe that. Between Arizona State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Texas, and Missouri. I'm going to throw Missouri in there as well because they're still a pretty good team. Between those 5 games, if you told me that you swapped out Mississippi State's schedule for Ole Miss's schedule, if you told me that, I do believe Ole Miss would have lost at least 2 of those games. I don't know which ones, but my guess is they probably would have lost 2 of them. Maybe Missouri because it's on the road. Maybe Texas A&M because it's on the road. Maybe they beat Texas. Maybe they beat Tennessee. I don't know. But my guess is if Ole Miss had played those 5 teams, they would have lost at least 2 of them. Now, and they already lost to Georgia. So there's 3 losses right there. Okay. So 8-3. If Mississippi State were to play Ole Miss's schedule, I think they're picking up at least 2 wins, possibly 3. I think Mississippi State could beat South Carolina. I think Mississippi State could beat Kentucky. And I think they probably could have beaten LSU. But I'm not going to just give them that. They probably still would have lost to Oklahoma. They've lost to Georgia. They lost to Florida. But I think Mississippi State's picking up at least 2 wins, and they would be coming into the Egg Bowl 7-4. Now, that's all speculation. I can't prove it. I don't know that for a fact. But I truly believe that if the tables had been reversed, the records of these 2 teams would just be completely different. It's insane to me how I talked about this, I guess, I don't remember when I talked about this, but I talked about this either last week or the week before, just how different the strength of schedule can be for teams in the SEC with these just massive conferences. With having 16 teams, you can have such drastic differences in schedule. You truly don't know who is the best team. You can have a pretty good idea, but most teams, if they played the schedule that Mississippi State played this year, aren't escaping with anything less than 3 losses. That's just not going to happen. I truly believe that. Even the best teams in the country are going to struggle against that schedule. And Mississippi State maybe we should give Jeff Lebby a little more credit than we do, but yeah, it's been difficult. And that's what makes it even more frustrating. State could have won 3 more games if they had just taken care of business and finished the opponents off. That's just what's so frustrating about it, is against a really difficult schedule, Mississippi State could be looking at an 8-3 record if they had just taken care of what they were supposed to, and they could have won those games. So, who wins this weekend? Look, I'm never going to predict Ole Miss to win against Mississippi State. Never. I will never, ever do that. So I'm going to predict Mississippi State, but I think they actually can pull this off. Ole Miss has not just run away from any team that doesn't have that has an SEC logo on their shirt. They just haven't. Their biggest margin of victory was 30-14 against South Carolina. It was a 16-point win. Every single team that they have played has been competitive against them because their defense is not that great. Look, they're going to get some sacks against State this week. That's just the way it is. Blake Shapen is going to start, and it's going to drive us all crazy. But I do believe that there is a path to victory for State. We talked last week about the distractions. We talked last week about how all that's playing out in the media and in social media with Lane Kiffin. So there is that path to victory. But the other issue is, like I said, Ole Miss has not just completely dominated anybody that they played all year long. It is going to be on the road. And if Mississippi State can get off to a fast start, you can get the crowd into the game and you can put some real pressure on Ole Miss. And there is going to be pressure on Ole Miss because they need to win to assure themselves of getting in the college football playoff. If they lose, there is a chance that they don't make it. They're number 6 in the country right now. They may go up. I don't think they will, though. I don't think anybody in front of them lost this weekend. But they're number 6. If you lose to Mississippi State, you're going to fall. And even with Lane Kiffin, they still might not make it out. I think they will. But the college football playoff person, Hunter Yurachek, I think, is in charge of it now. I do believe he said if Lane Kiffin leaves, they will have to factor that into their decision about whether or not they believe that Ole Miss will still be able to compete if they were to be 10-2 going into the college football playoff. And that's not what they want. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Ole Miss, and you're just hoping and praying that that pressure will just come back to bite them. And I think that it can. Will it? I don't know. But look, I think it's going to be If State can get off to a good start, I think they can win this game. If they come out and go 3 and out, though, on their first 2 possessions, or barely get it past the 50, or just can't hardly move the football to begin with, and Blake Shapen is out there, the crowd is going to turn against Jeff Lebby real quick. You're going to start hearing the boo birds coming out. You're going to start hearing people getting really loud about how Jeff Lebby is just tanking this game, and it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. So, like I said, I don't know. I think State can win. I'm hoping they can. So I'll predict them to win. Like I said, am I being overly optimistic? Probably, but it is what it is. So, all right, let's get into the Mississippi State basketball team. Let's talk about their struggles because, boy, it did not look good this past week. Mississippi State went and played in the Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City. They got blown out by Kansas State. And the very next day, you were hoping that they could rebound and get a win against New Mexico, and they don't. They end up losing to New Mexico. And this is the biggest sign of concern so far. You know, you lose to Iowa State, that's fine. You lose to Kansas State, not great, but oh well, it is what it is. Now you lose. Now you've lost to New Mexico. Now you're 2-3, and the Bulldogs just don't look good. They get nothing from anyone not named Epps or Hubbard. Those two are great. They've been really good. Epps, thankfully, after his first game, has looked much better. He's really looked a lot better since that first game where he ended up suffering a concussion. But those two are doing really well. Everybody else on the team is just not. They've got Quentin, what's his name? I can't remember his last name. He's a 7-footer. He's 265 pounds. And it's like he's not even there when the other teams are on offense. They just bully past him. He provides absolutely no real interior defense. And that's what has made this just so insanely difficult to watch, because of Chris Jans. We watched the first 2 years of the Chris Jans era where teams had to fight for every single bucket they got against Mississippi State. Didn't matter how good or how bad Mississippi State was, they had to struggle. It was a struggle to score against Mississippi State. Teams are scoring at will against Mississippi State right now. It's like they're not even out on the court with them. That's how easy it is for teams to score. Right now, they still don't know who is their best contributors outside of those two that I mentioned earlier, besides Hubbard and besides Epps. Those two are about the only two that Chris Jans can rely on. Everybody else that's out there, you don't know what you're getting from them. Sean Jones Jr. played 20 minutes against New Mexico, had 2 points. I think they were both free throws. Amir Ali, who was supposed to be a really talented guy coming in, and they said the defense is keeping him off the floor. He went like 1 for 7 against New Mexico. And he's just not really that good. Like, he's not that good at all. So I don't know what's going on with this basketball team. It's starting to make me wonder if the style that Chris Jans likes to play, as much as the NBA style is starting to come into college, if that style of play that Chris Jans likes to play isn't just going to be effective anymore. And look, I'm not going to start calling for his job. That's not something I want to start doing at this point. But if you look at the SEC and the way that it currently is and how good and how stacked it is, it's hard to find wins with the way that this Mississippi State basketball team is playing. And I don't know where they're going to come from. This team has a lot of questions right now, and I don't know where the answers are. And I never would have thought that we would have gotten here so quickly with Chris Jans, because the first 3 years were so successful. Now, last year was a little bit of a disappointment, but those first 2 years were so incredibly good because he got 2 teams to the NCAA tournament that I didn't think really deserved to get there because they weren't that. He made them play above their talent level. This year, it's not good. We have to really question Chris Jans as an evaluator, because every single person he seems to bring in outside of Josh Hubbard isn't panning out. And they're not panning out well at all. And this is a problem. So, like I said, I'm not there yet in terms of like, we got to move on from Chris Jans, but if this continues, it's going to be hard to continue to make that case. So they've got to get this together. Like I said, they scheduled a pretty hard non-conference schedule. They've got to start stacking some wins up, because at this point, you really can't afford to lose anymore. If you lose anymore, you are probably going to end up outside the NCAA tournament. You might even end up outside the NIT, of all things. So, like I said, I don't know where they're going to get these wins from, but they got to find some soon. They really do. So, all right. Let's talk a little bit about some things that make me happier. Let's talk about some movie and television stuff. Movies that I haven't seen movies recently. I'm hoping to go see Wicked for good here soon. My daughter and I and my wife and I, my daughter, wife and I went and saw it last week. Saw the first one last year, and we're hoping to make it to the new one at some point in the coming weeks. My daughter's sick though, so it's going to be kind of hard to make it out there anytime soon. I wanted to look at the box office, and so let me see if I can find it. They did really well. It ended up getting $150 million in the U.S., $26 million worldwide. So it ended up doing really well. The critics have not been great about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it's actually good, if it is actually good. But that's one of the things that is a little bit surprising is Ryan and I talked about this when we were on the main attraction, is the box office has just not been very good this year, but there have been a few movies that have kind of broken through, and Wicked it did really well last year. The first one did, and it looks like this one's going to do really well as well. So I'm looking forward to catching it. I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping it's better than what the reviews are saying, because the reviews have they've been very meh. They haven't been bad, but they haven't been just overwhelmingly positive either, unlike the first one. So, but let's talk about Pluribus real quick. I've been talking about this show since I started the podcast. It's just an amazing show. If you haven't watched it, like I said, go get Apple TV. This is the 4th episode of Pluribus, and it's just a really, really good television show. It's the premise of it, with the fact that all of the Earth, basically, with the exception of like 13 people, get taken over by a hive mind alien virus. And the fact that they're just these insanely nice people as well just kind of makes it even more interesting. Like, they're not really sinister, and you're not really scared of these people. And it's the fact that you have this one person, Carol, who is fighting against them to save humanity, even though they seem to be like really nice, really good people. So, but what's interesting about this one was Carol basically is trying to find out as much as she can about them. And in so doing, she opens herself up to personal criticism. And it was just a really fascinating watch to sit there and see the way that she was willing to take on personal pain to try to figure out to try to get as much information about this virus, this hive mind virus that is taking over the population of the Earth. And to watch her do that, and to watch her go through those steps and to do everything that she does, is just really fascinating. It was really a captivating watch. And like I said, this is what makes this show just so incredibly good, is just the fact that, one, it seems like the hive mind is kind of right, because they seem to they want the best for everyone, and they don't seem to be mean. But the fact that they are willing to continue to search for ways to make Carol and others who have not been able to become part of the hive mind, and they're still trying their best to force that upon them, is a really interesting thing to explore, because they do really, by making Carol a lesbian in this show, they were able to bring in something where a part of her life where she ended up comparing them to a time when she was forced to go to, I think it was called Freedom Falls, which is a conversion camp for LGBTQ children, where parents send them when they find out their children are gay. You have some parents who will send them to these conversion camps, and they're absolutely awful. And it doesn't work. There's been time and time again, there's been studies and research shown that it doesn't work, but they take them anyway in the hopes that they will convert them from being gay. It's an absolutely horrible process. Carol hated it there. She said, they all had these smiles and they all sounded really nice, just like these people do. And that she thought they were the worst people in the world, because they were trying to tell her she couldn't be who she was. And that's what the hive mind is telling her now. They don't want her to be who she is. And that's just something that Carol just can't abide by. And that's one of the things that makes this show just so really interesting and compelling. I've really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, if you haven't watched it, get yourself an Apple TV subscription and go check it out. Other thing I watched this week was The Beast and Me on Netflix. This has Claire Danes and has Matthew Rhys. Really good show. Not the best show that I've seen, but it's a really good show. And it just is, what makes it really good is the fact that Claire Danes is doing a role that she's just so really good at, where her life is just kind of spiraling out of control due to the circumstances around her. Not necessarily things that she could have done, but because of the circumstances around her, her life is kind of spiraling out of control. She's emotional a lot. It's just a role that Claire Danes has done really well throughout the course of her history. And this is another one that she's done really well. Matthew Rhys is a guy that a lot of people aren't really familiar with. I'm not really that familiar with him myself, because I think his biggest show prior to this was The Americans, and that was one I did not see. But he is really good in this. The way it works, and I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to talk about it anyway, but it's kind of a murder mystery, kind of, where basically the setup is Claire Danes is an author, and somebody and a couple move in next door to her. The couple is played by Matthew Rhys and Brittany Snow. And the premise is that Matthew Rhys's character is basically trying to escape the city because his wife died, and there was a lot of speculation about whether or not he killed her, and they don't really truly come out and answer whether or not he actually did it until close to the very end of the show. It's an 8-episode limited series, and this is kind of what they're talking about. And basically, just watching the two characters interact between Claire Danes and Matthew Rhys, and Brittany Snow's there as well. I'll talk about her in a second, but it's just really good. It's like I said, those two together just are really, really good on screen together. And the fact that Matthew Rhys is just kind of a scumbag, but he's still kind of a scumbag that like draws people to him because of just the way that his personality works. It's a really interesting show. Like I said, this is like the third or fourth show that we've gotten like this like woman in trouble, dangerous. Like I said, that kind of murder mystery type stuff. We had one earlier that was just absolute trash on Netflix with The Hunting Wives. Ryan and I watched that. Ryan liked it. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. But that show was just absolutely awful. You have a better version of this type of show with The Girlfriend that had Robin Wright, and I can't remember who the other woman that was in that show. But it was pretty good. It wasn't great, but it was still pretty good. This one I think is the best version of this because I think Claire Danes does this better than anybody else. So if you're looking for a decent show to check out, I would recommend The Beast and Me. I keep saying The Beast in Me. The Beast and Me on Netflix. So definitely check it out. Last but not least, like I said, Stranger Things is getting ready to release this weekend. Not this weekend, this Wednesday at 7:00 here in the Central Time Zone. Just change whatever it is to wherever it is you are living. But anyways, 7:00 Central on Wednesday, Stranger Things Season 5 comes out. I haven't finished Season 2, but one of the things I want to talk about was I saw a quote from the Duffer Brothers. I think it was the Duffer Brothers. Maybe it was the director. I don't remember. But they said the age thing that people talk about so much isn't as bad as people say it was. And like, that's not true. But when I watched the second season, I was like, okay, they might have a point. Because here's the deal. The first season comes out in July of 2016. And they are very age appropriate. They're playing basically the ages that most of them are. There's a little bit of an age gap between a few of the kids on it, but for the most part, it's about right. Season 2 comes out a year and 3 months later. It comes out in October of 2017, and they did that on purpose. The show itself takes place during Halloween, and so they're kind of playing into that. And so they released it around Halloween. So like I said, that worked out really well. But it was only a year and 3 months later, so the kids hadn't grown up that much, so they were still pretty much age appropriate then. It was the summer of 2019 is when the third season comes out. And so it's almost 2 full years, not quite, but almost 2 full years. And you're starting to see, okay, yeah, these kids are supposed to be, like 8th graders, and now they're pushing upper high school. And so, like I said, you're starting to see the age gap a little bit because it is taking a little bit longer to get the seasons produced. And where it becomes really obvious, though, is season 4, because it takes almost 3 full years. It comes out in the summer of 2022, whereas it was the summer of 2019. The previous one, like I said, almost 3 full years. So they look a lot older in season 4. In season 5, they're going to look a lot older again because it's been almost 3.5 years since season 4 to season 5. It's these last 3 seasons where the production time to getting the show has come out has been so much more, and that's why they're starting to look so much older than what they actually are playing. But season 2 is so incredibly good as well. The first 2 seasons are great. One of the things that makes season 2 stand out is, when you have new seasons of television show, you have to bring in new characters eventually. And Sadie Sink coming in as Max has just been a godsend to this show. And she was really great in season 2, adding a girl into the mix to go with the boys plus 11 was just absolutely the right call. And it just did so many things for that show and the way that these kid actors were acting. And then I think they truly understood what they had with Sadie Sink, because in season 4, she gets to shine a lot. She's going to have just an opportunity to have an incredible career. I think her and Maya Hawke probably have the best chances of having the best careers coming out of this show when the show finally wraps up, because Sadie Sink was just absolutely incredible, especially in episode 4 of season 4. But she had some other moments as well. And Maya Hawke has just been great ever since they brought her into the show. And look, she has, Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke are her parents, so it's not surprising that she's got acting chops as well. But looking forward to this upcoming season. I think it's going to be really good. I'm excited about it. There's going to be some long episodes like there were for season 4. And I'm happy about it. I know some people don't like it, but I'm happy about it. The more the merrier for me. So, it's not the full season. It's just volume 1. I'm not sure how many episodes that will entail. My guess is 3 or 4. And then we'll get volume 2 in about a month. I think volume 2 releases on Christmas Eve, and you'll have the opportunity to watch the series finale in a movie theater. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll see. So, anyway, guys, need to go ahead and kind of wrap things up. I appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate all the support. Like I said, if you haven't followed me on all the social media platforms, if you haven't done that yet, I would really appreciate it if you did. But until then, and until next time, we'll talk to you then.